Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Monday, August 25th, 2025. And black market in migrant permits, work permits. Yes, that seems to be happening. Holly Doan has that. So I'm not surprised. There's a whole bunch of other invasion related news today. Lots out of the UK as well. So we've got to talk about that. But there's Punjabi rap artists that are including beating up white guys in their music videos, which is that's a little bit weird. So I got that for you this morning as well. The rise of AI, and because of AI taking over jobs, necessitates speech controls. That's why it's being phased in. I just realized it this morning, and I was looking at the tabs, and it kind of paints that story. So we'll talk about that a little bit this morning. $2 billion more to Ukraine and boots on the ground in Ukraine. Really? Really? Yes, that's where Carney is looking to go, and he's saying as much. And there's some speculation over recently there were increases to the Canadian military wages and some other benefits and things like that. And now people are speculating maybe this increase was to encourage people to go and, do a stint in Ukraine. And for now, Carney's talking about it, I think, in the context of training Ukrainians, but we don't have much of a military. What kind of training can Canada provide that the last three wars in Ukraine, in the war in Ukraine, that they don't know already? I don't understand the whole saying, oh yeah, we're going to go train people over there, seems like a smokescreen or code for something else. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to talk about Ukraine and Mark Carney sneaking there in the dead of night. And at the end of these series of tabs, we'll talk about how Mark Carney mentioned that he was going to Germany, but didn't mention anything about stopping off and handing over $2 billion of our taxpayer dollars to Ukraine. So all of this is strange. All of this feels like we're being very cut out of the management of our own country. And well, that's not very good. Here's Freedom Fighter. He says, Carney just gave Ukraine another $2 billion, 100% borrowed money. That will require $2 million per week just in interest payments, places Carney further down the hole of bankruptcy and with zero parliamentary oversight and no budget, still no budget. The Liberal crime syndicate is deliberately crushing Canada. It does seem that way. It does seem, but that's, again, the whole broader West. Here, Mark Carney is making an announcement. Global News is making the announcement with Mark Carney reel in the background, but they're saying $680 million in cash to Ukraine. Are we doing pallets full of cash flown over on Mark Carney's jet? Weird, very strange. $680 million worth of cash. Why do we have that kind of liquid money? Was that just sitting in petty cash, or is that pulled out just for Ukraine? If we have $680 million in liquid cash, but we're billions of dollars in debt, and we are billions of dollars in debt, we're 598, almost $600 billion in debt federally, and then add all of the provinces to that as well. And so we're screwed as far as debt goes. But where are you getting that $600 million in cash money? And why are you holding it in cash money? What? What's happening here? And how can you take that money out without a good reason, right? You go to the bank and you want to take $3,000 out. They're quizzing you on, who's getting this money, and they're implying that you're involved in crime. Anyway, here's Global News announcing that Mark Carney is handing $680 million in cash to Ukraine, to everybody's confusion.
$680 million in cash to Ukraine. $680 million
I wish there was more
cash to Ukraine.
I wish there was a little bit more context, right? Oh my gosh, I don't need to hear that again. Here is more news on this. CTV News is reporting Prime Minister Carney visits Ukraine. Canada, quote, not excluding boots on the ground in possible security guarantee, official says. No thanks. How about absolutely effing well not? Right? Like, that is a terrible, terrible idea. Mark Nixon says, we don't even have a seat at the NATO meetings, the biggest meeting since World War II in Washington, D.C., and Canada didn't get a seat since we're the largest contributor per capita to Ukraine. How is this even possible? Right? And gov.exe is saying Mark Carney's new government has already handed Ukraine $1 billion before the $2 billion today or yesterday. This year's federal deficit is projected to be over $90 billion. Why the F are we wasting giving money away when we're running deficits? This is criminal. Yes, it is. But we've got to talk about the boots on the ground in right now. Mark Nixon says, do you support Mark Carney sending Canadian boots on the ground in Ukraine? And so we'll start it at a minute in. It takes place around here. I just want to give context. He's talking about supporting Ukraine and Slava Ukraini and all of this crap. I don't think 1 cent of Canadian treasure or lives should be spent on foreign wars while we have the issues that we have, domestic issues that we have in our country ongoing. If we have homeless people, if we have people who can't afford housing, if we have 22% unemployment for males, those are issues that should preclude. And if we have a debt deficit of $98 billion and a debt of $600 billion, we shouldn't be sending billions to anybody to do anything at all, period. This should not be happening. And these guys are only really talking about one layer of debt as well. We've got more debt than that. As I said, all of the province's debt. There's one taxpayer, right? Like, I'm a Canadian citizen and an Ontario citizen. So I get the Ontario debt and the federal debt. And if you live in PEI, you get the PEI debt and the federal debt. No. The total debt of the country is calculated countrywide. We all get it all, baby, right? So each province, all that debt, that's all of ours, right? And if you add it all up, I mean, I don't even know how many times over GDP we are, but they play math tricks to make us think things aren't as bad as they really are. But oh man, if you knew how bad things really were. Here's Mark Carney.
Support. We're working through.
It's been a couple of days since the last incident of too fast talking. Sorry, I was going through this whole thing, so I got to back it up. Here we go.
In matters of intelligence and other support, we are working through with our allies in the Coalition of the Willing and with Ukraine the modalities of those security guarantees on the land, in the air, and the sea, and I would not exclude the presence of troops.
I would not exclude the presence of troops. I'm going to play it again just because I want you to really hear it, to really understand what he's saying. I will not exclude the presence of troops. Yep.
And the sea, and I would not exclude the presence of troops. Yeah.
Right? So, wow. Do you want the Canadian military being sent over to Ukraine for what? To train them on how to win against Russia. Okay. Will they have sleeping bags? Because we don't have sleeping bags. So I hope Ukraine's got enough sleeping bags for everybody. Oh, we're hot bunking. Hot bunking is you get to sleep while the person who's sharing the bunk is working. And when they're done working, they'll take the bunk you were just sleeping in. That's why it's hot. And you go to work. Yay, Canadian military, right? Oh, right. Everybody's very cozy with each other. Melissa says, did Carney increase Canadian military pay and recruitment efforts just to send troops to Ukraine? It is a Mr. Burns-esque plot that I could see in a Simpsons episode. So yeah, very plausible. Very, very plausible. Gov.exe, and I've already read this, but Mark Nixon says we didn't have a seat at the NATO meetings, and we're talking about things like we're in charge of things, and that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The debt in Canada, almost $600 billion, according to the Canadian Government Canada Statistics website. And again, that's not even really talking about the provincial debt. That's not talking about anything else. And it's erroneous to only measure our debt that way because there's one taxpayer. There is one taxpayer. So when we have a debt like that, even if just $600 billion was the debt, even if that was it, right? There was a time when $20 billion was the debt, right? Like, oh no. Anyway, or was it the deficit? Gosh, we've had a $300 billion debt for a while. Like it's been pretty low, but then when you add it to the provincial debt, I digress. You shouldn't be giving billions of dollars away to foreign countries for their foreign wars or whatever else the money's going for while there's any debt at all. And even when there's not debt, you should ask us. There should be a question. Do we want to spend this money on Ukraine? Yes, no. On Ukraine's war against Russia? Yes, no. No. But I mean, we don't have a budget, so we have no idea what the impact of this is, other than it's going to be expensive, at least $2 billion. The real Mr. Bench says, how much is this going to cost Canada? $2 billion. $2 billion worth of military equipment? Okay. Carney was not invited to attend the Coalition of the Willing in Washington, so instead he flew to Ukraine under secret until there to hand out billions of dollars, buy his way into the whole negotiation. Joe Warmington says, he's responding to Mark Carney. Mark Carney says, Ukraine is on the front line in the struggles for freedom and sovereignty. Could have fooled me. After 3 years at war, Ukrainians urgently need more military equipment. Canada is answering that call, providing $2 billion for drones, armored vehicles, and other critical resources. $2 billion, eh? Waste of money. Here's Mario. He says, Carney consistently making the wrong choice. Meanwhile, Canadians get fined $28,000 for walking in the woods. Canada first. And this is the guy who can't make a choice meme. And 30 water bombers for $2 billion or $2 billion to Ukraine. Well, joke's on us. We didn't have the money in the first place. Right? Like, gosh. It's so tiresome. Here's Mark Carney. He says, President Zelensky's leadership has been extraordinary. For 3 years, his courage and iron will have galvanized and sustained international support for Ukraine's fight. Now, allies and partners must intensify our efforts for a just and lasting peace. Nonsense. I was looking for Joe Warmington's tweet, so hold on a second. I want to find Joe's tweet. He's asking about who's making the stuff. Oh, I don't know if I have it now. That's frustrating. I had a tweet from Joe Warmington asking Mark Carney who's making all of these things, and it was supposed to go right here. Oh, this is, yeah. Joe Warmington says, who's makes the drone and the military equipment? Who owns the companies? Does it bring jobs to Canada? Does the Canadian military need drones and new tanks? So Joe Warmington, at least somebody in the mainstream media has some sense, and they're talking about, like, do we need this? Is this something that is necessary? And if it's necessary, can you justify it with kind of a budget or anything like that? Nah, forget about it. Tim, or yeah, we'll just call him Tim, says, first time in Canadian history that Mark Carney has been spotted wearing a Canadian flag pin, but only with a Ukraine flag beside it. Why won't he just proudly wear only the Canadian flag? You know why. Because he's a globalist. That's why. And he's always been a globalist. He was the Bank of England. He was he ran the Bank of England for a while. He is not somebody who's Canada first. Never was. The most European of non-European countries, says Mark Carney of Canada, right? Like Mark Carney, who doesn't live in Canada, doesn't know a damn thing about the country, and who's now running it, right? Right, sure. A CBC watcher says, there will be no exclusion. So this is Mark Carney. This is 2 minutes of Mark Carney talking about Ukrainian security guarantees, and that Ukraine will have a pathway to join Europe if they want to, and join NATO if they want to. And this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard anybody say. And it seems like Trump likes Mark Carney, I guess. And it seems like there's indications that there's a trade deal on the way or something to that effect, because Mark Carney and Trump have some relationship. I don't know. But at the same time, I feel like this is a dangerous game, completely undermining Trump cutting us out. Carney going to Ukraine and then making all these announcements and making these statements makes it sound like he has some kind of say. And he sure doesn't. He sure doesn't. So here's Mark Carney pretending that he's an important person on the world stage, and nobody's listening to him. They're having meetings in Washington where things are actually happening, right? Like, so Mark Carney is in Ukraine giving press conferences. Here we go.
Yes, hi, Briar Stewart from CBC. Prime Minister, given that Russia has rejected the idea of a NATO-backed security guarantee and European forces on the ground, what actually do you think the chances are of a ceasefire? And if there is one, I mean, you mentioned you don't exclude the presence of Canadian troops on the ground. Are you referring to that in a peacekeeping capacity or training? If you could answer that also in French. And President Zelensky, you talked about the importance of having a presence of Canadian troops. I'm wondering what more you can say about that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the first is we need a cessation of hostilities. We need a ceasefire. We can call it a ceasefire, a truce, an armistice. That's necessary to stop the killing.
He's aligning himself with Germany and Merz, and they were saying that, well, Maloney was saying, why waste time? And Trump doesn't want a ceasefire. Trump wants full peace deal, and Carney's going back to ceasefire.
But the conditions around that, there will be military force in Ukraine, Ukrainian military force. There'll be no exclusion of pathways for Ukraine to the European Union or to NATO for that matter, pathways towards. And there will be security guarantees. There will be security guarantees in any durable ceasefire. That's the lesson of Minsk. That's the lesson of 2014. That's the lesson of history, is that we need not to trust and verify, but deter and fortify. And the fortification, the deterrence, is anchored in those security guarantees. Again, as I said, starting with the Ukrainian army and reinforcing that, but then being buttressed by the coalition of the willing, And again, I welcome, without specifying, welcome the openness of President Trump to some form of U.S. participation in that. Now, all of this in real time, as you ask your question, is under discussion about the specificities and the modalities.
That he was cut out of, that nobody really wants to hear from him because he doesn't represent anybody. He doesn't represent anybody that's got anything to really offer, right? Like, what do we offer Ukraine? We're going to buttress Ukraine's military? Oh, okay. What about our military? We don't have enough military to defend our own borders and ocean. We don't have a navy, right? Like, if we didn't have the asterisks to refuel our ships, our navy couldn't be classified as a navy anymore. And they went all out on Mark Norman to remove him because of what he did to get the asterisks, right? Not using Irving, but using Davies Shipyard, so on and so forth. And they removed him for that. So it's incredible to hear that we're going to be supporting Ukraine and training these people to win a war against Russia. Whew. Wow. With what army, sir? Like, Alternative News says, Lavrov, Russia demands equal role in Ukraine's security guarantees. So according to Mark Carney can, lay the groundwork, etc. But this Lavrov guy, I'll forget him, right? Forget what these guys want. We'll tell them with the coalition of the willing. I'm very suspect of the coalition of the willing as well. Anyway, back to this. Any security guarantees for Ukraine must be negotiated on an equal basis with participation of major powers, including China, the US, the UK, and France. Ukraine must be protected against takeover by Europe. Did you see that list? Canada was not in that list. So Mr. Carney's whole big plan here of Canadian troops on the ground to fortify Ukraine against Russia, blah, 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 blah. Nobody wants to hear from Canada. Nobody thinks Canada's got anything of worthwhile to hear. Just stop talking. It's like a 12-year-old telling the adults in the party a story, and the adults have had just enough to drink to tell that kid to shut up. And I was that 12-year-old, so I'm talking from experience, right? And sometimes it's better to just be quiet and listen and learn something than it is to talk endlessly or yammer on endlessly, as my Nan said. Stop yammering on, Mark. Just bloody well listen. Okay. You're right, Nan. Sorry. Anyway, it is frustrating when heads of state don't get it. Alternate News says Zelensky's not in charge. He is a puppet. If Zelensky, this is a quote, if Zelensky had given up an inch of unconquered land, he would have been a corpse, first politically and then literally. The Ukrainian guy who's running against him, I guess, the Ukrainian strongman Sternenko explains. So it's interesting to see people supporting Zelensky's refusal to negotiate peace. If any of that peace has to do with giving up land, we'll see. We'll see. It doesn't seem like anybody in this situation actually wants peace. They want Ukraine to continue churning all of the things that they've been churning through endlessly. They never, ever want it to end. And they want an unending meat grinder as well, just to send people to die, basically, I think. If I was in the Canadian military, I wouldn't want to go to Ukraine. No thanks. Leading report says Russia says no deal can be signed by Zelensky because he's illegitimate. So we'll see. Maybe that's true. Maybe he can't even sign a deal. Here's Sprinter Express, and he says the map of Ukraine in the White House does not reflect the real situation on the front. The map of combat actions brought by the Ukrainian delegation to the White House for a meeting with Trump does not reflect the real situation on the front, said Vitaly Ganchev, the head of the military civil administration in the Kharkov region. I'm getting that. Kharkiv region? Sorry, I'm getting it terribly wrong. I don't speak Ukrainian. Their map shows only those victories they try to present to the West through aggressive propaganda. So it's a false map, not actually true. And so they're arguing from a false starting point. And so if you start traveling on a map, if you look at a map and you think you're in one area and you want to go to another area and you start following what you think is the right route, pretty soon you'll realize like you're not seeing the waypoints that you would expect to see, right? The monuments or whatever's supposed to be there, it's not there. And so pretty soon you'd realize that, oh man, I started from the wrong spot. I wasn't in the spot I thought I was in. So I need to reorient myself and find out where I am so I can follow this map correctly and get to where I'm supposed to be. In the same way, if you're misled by, what this war map looks like, and then you come to explore things or you try to explore peace, and then you find out, oh man, like these things aren't the way it actually looked, right? Yeah. It is misrepresentative of what's going on, and they're doing that on purpose to influence the outcome of the quote-unquote peace talks. Yesterday, when Mark Carney left or 2 days ago when Mark Carney left for Germany, etc., he made no mention of actually going to Ukraine. That was only sprung on people when he was announcing $2 billion more to Ukraine for no good reason at all, that we get nothing for. And so people are wondering why he lied. Bradshaw says, why did Mark Carney lie about going to Ukraine? Carney knew where he was going when he boarded the plane last night. So the announcement basically says he's going to Poland, Germany, and Latvia from August 25th to 27th. And then at the end, he says, Prime Minister Carney would also like to underscore Canada's continued support for lasting peace in Ukraine and Europe, emphasizing that no decision about Ukraine should be taken without Ukraine and no decision, blah, 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 blah. Again, this is obstructionist. And Canada, nobody wants to hear from Canada. Nobody gives a shit. The other piece of this is Real Mr. Bench says, what plane did Mark Carney fly to Ukraine on? Because if it was the official government of Canada for the Prime Minister, CFC1, the information is being hidden from flight radar. Which is it? Now using a different plane, or has the Prime Minister demanded that the data be kept secret? So nobody's allowed to track where Carney's going, especially when he's landing secretly in the Ukraine to hand out $2 billion of taxpayer dollars with no budget. How is this legal? Great question. I don't know. Parliamentary oversight, schmarliamentary oversight. Who needs that? Here is Doug Ford bending the knee to Ukraine. He says yesterday's Ukrainian Independence Day commemoration at Centennial Park was a great chance to celebrate Ukrainian culture and reaffirm Ontario's support for Ukraine and its fight for freedom. Slava Ukraine. Weird, right? I don't think that I'm interested at all in having politicians who are supposed to be serving Canadians who are 100% focused on Ukraine. I don't think that that's appropriate. If you're 100% focused on Ukraine, why don't you move there? Maybe you could fight for them and stuff. I hear they're fighting for their sovereignty. I don't know. I don't care. I want people in Canada to worry about Canada and the citizens in Canada. Do you know Doug Ford's ignoring boys being encouraged to use the girls' bathroom at Centennial High School in Guelph? His education minister is ignoring it. Everybody's ignoring it. He doesn't care. His education minister doesn't care. They've passed me off to a third-party bureaucracy that says it's because of safety. And I said, could you explain what that means? And they haven't responded to me. So what does that even mean? Here's Danielle Smith, and she says, Slava Ukraini, harder than Doug Ford. She says, for more than a century, Ukrainian families have helped shape Alberta's identity through their homesteads, churches, and traditions of grit and resilience. On Ukrainian Independence Day, it's not a Canadian holiday. It has nothing to do with us. Come on. On Ukrainian Independence Day, we honor those roots and affirm that every nation deserves freedom and peace. Just not Canada, right? Welcome any truck driver who wants to come and drive truck here. No, you don't need a license. Who needs a license? Just get in the truck and drive the drugs across the border. Thanks. Alberta has welcomed thousands fleeing war, offering safety and a helping hand up, especially to women and children. Women and children? Are women and children coming here? Because I thought it was all fighting age men. I thought 90% fighting age men, right? Women and children? Where are the women and children? I haven't seen them. We will always stand with Ukraine and with the proud Ukrainian families who helped build this province. I think those people who live in the province of Alberta in Canada, I think those people want Canada to do well, and I think they could probably use that $2 billion for something in Alberta, right? I don't understand this bending the knee, and I don't understand why people tolerate it, and even get upset with me when I call it out. This is bullshit. This is absolute oh, wow, there's Ukrainians who live in Canada. Are there? Well, maybe they should go back and fight for their country then. Holy smokeronis. Did you hear they're at war? My gosh. And if there are Ukrainians, again, who built the country, I'm sure they want Canada to do well. And I'm sure they want their politicians to focus on Canada and not Ukraine. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And it shouldn't be friggin' well tolerated. It's ridiculous. And you can be proud of your heritage. I wouldn't want any politicians to focus on England or Greece in Canada. We live in Canada, not England and not Greece. You can't do a damn thing about those places. You don't work or live there. What the hell are you talking about? There's no reason to do it. And I have heritage from those places, but it makes no sense, right? Even if there was a bunch of other people from England and Greece around me, right? I think all of those people would want our country to do better fundamentally than those countries to do better, right? And if we were in a competition, we'd be cheering for the Canadians, not the English, not the Greeks. It's simple, right? How many medals did you get? Oh, do you mean the Greeks or the Brits? Oh, I meant Canada. Yeah. You mean the Ukrainians? F off. Come on. Seriously. It's ridiculous. And with that, I will say goodbye to the stream. I've got another half hour show here at least, probably more. This is ridiculous. We should not tolerate this. And Mark Carney is ridiculous. He doesn't represent the citizens. If you want the rest of the show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. And if not, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you tomorrow.